We get into this life, we don't know what we want, we're afraid to even try because we might fail, or insert excuse or insert scary based fear. And we get into this boat and we get pushed around by the tide.
There's a formula for getting what you want. It's tangible. If anyone else has ever achieved it, it means there's a way to get it. But you have to be clear on what it is that you want and why you want it so that you can tap into that. Hey everybody, this is Bianca.
And this is Emilia.
And welcome to another episode of Evolve Ventures, where we are making evolution possible for growth-minded humans just like every single one of you through vulnerable lessons, stories, and technology. We hope you enjoyed the most recent episode, number 168, as I'm like trying to swallow, is your past determining your future. It was a really, really good episode. I really enjoyed recording that one. If you are someone who finds that you struggle having hope, struggle believing that the future is going to look any different for you, that good things are coming your way because you've had some really crummy things happen in the past, head on over to that episode. It is a really good episode. We talk about why it happened and we go through some simple tools of how to change that. Today, 169, Motivation Monday, you have to know what you want. And this episode really came from this experience that I had with one of my clients the other day that I'm really excited to share. So I was in a session with a client and she's like, Bianca, there's this thing that I really want to talk about, but I'm uncomfortable talking about it. And I'm like, love that. Let's go. And she's like, I want to get closure from my abuser, from this guy that I used to date who, he really hurt me. And I was like, wow, like what made you want that? Like what's bringing that up? And she's like, me and my fiance are trying to move forward and we're trying to do all of these things and I want to heal, but I'm struggling to be in this relationship because I haven't healed yet from that. And I think getting closure is going to do that for me. And I'm like, okay, awesome. And so I went through this step-by-step process with her that I want to take all of you through. And it's something that Emilia and it's funny, when we were preparing for this episode, I was going through this and I looked over at her notes and she literally had pulled in the same exact thing that I did. And we didn't collaborate together before we did this. So it's funny. We were really in tune with this and in sync with this. So I'm going to take everyone through this process. And Emilia is going to tie into this when she's going to bring her feedback into this too. So the first thing that I did with this client is I said, okay, if we're going to do this, we really need to set an intention for this. So why do you want to do this? And what are you hoping to get out of this experience? And she's like, well, I don't really know. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Let's say that you have this conversation, you go up to him, you tell him everything that you want him to know. What happens next? And she's like, oh, okay. And then she's like, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, okay, great. So that's your intention. You're hoping to get this. You're hoping for this to happen. You're hoping for this to happen. And then the next step I said was, what do you want to feel as a result of that? So you go into it, this thing happens, you get this result. What is that going to mean for you? How are you going to feel as a result of doing that? And she said, well, I want to feel at peace. And I said, okay, that's a little too vague though. What does that actually look like for you? What is peace going to look like for you? And she said, well, I think peace for me is going to look like not feeling like a victim anymore. Not feeling sad over what happened anymore. Feeling like I'm in control of my life. And I said, that's perfect. That's a lot better because you know what that's going to look like for you. Perfect. What do you want to happen? Oh no, what has to happen? This is step 3. What has to happen in order for you to get the result that you want? And she's like, what does that mean? I said, well, what do you have to do in order to have that happen. So are you just going to go in and like yell at him and that's going to get you the thing that you want? Or do you need to maybe plan this out and, think about what you want and how you want to go about this? And she's like, no, definitely that one. So what has to happen in order for you to get the end result? Does he need to just completely agree with you and say he's sorry? Does he need to just listen to you? What has to happen for you to have your intention be met and to feel what you want to feel? So we went through that. That was step number 3. Step number 4, what are any barriers that might get in the way? So what might get in the way of you actually doing it, or of this person kind of being willing to do that? This is just what I said to her. But for you, for the listener, what barriers might get in the way? So let's say something that you want is to go to the gym, right? You have an understanding of why you want it. You understand what you want to feel from it. You understand what you're trying to get from the end result. What might get in the way? Well, I know when I wake up in the morning, I always hit snooze. Like I'm all excited the day before. I get my clothes out, I get ready, but then the morning comes and I just hit snooze and I'm like, nope, not doing it. Cool. We know that. That's a pattern. So the next step along with that is, now that you understand what the barrier is, what can you do to set yourself up so that you can work through that barrier? And then the last step is just setting up the plan. You have all of the information that you now need in order to actually get this thing done. So step 5, set it up now. Take the steps that you need to do the thing that you need to do in order to get that done. So for this client, it was writing out exactly what it was that she wanted to say to him, having it handwritten. Because one of the barriers for her was, by the time I actually go to ask him to do it, I know I'm going to get really scared and just not say what I have to say. And I'm like, awesome. Now you know that. So what can you do instead? And she's like, well, maybe I can write it. I was like, perfect. That's a great suggestion. Have it written out so that when you need to go do it, you're not just working on memory and you're going to be in a stress mode and you might freak out. So you'll actually have it written out in front of you and you'll know exactly what you want to say.
I love that. For our listeners, I don't know if you knew this about me, but I was a competitive sailor in college, D1. And
that's awesome.
When you get into a boat and you don't have this kind of action plan, if you will, that B just gave, right? What ends up happening, right? If you're a sailor, you get into a boat and you don't have a plan like this, what ends up happening? There's 2 things. If you're in a race, like I always was, if you get in a boat without these intentions and without this kind of step-by-step process, and you don't know what you want really by getting into that boat, you're a racer, but you don't really want to race. You don't really want to win. You don't want to try to get better than you did yesterday, right? You end up getting pushed around, just like everything else in life. And while I'm not going to say anything new that you guys haven't heard, I do want to share from experience. If you get in a boat as a competitive racer, as a sailor, as just a human, right? And cue this metaphor in your life, and you don't know what you want, how are you going to even have any chance at getting to a place that might even look worthy to you? So like in a boat, you get in, the tides are going to actually drift you to a complete distant place. And what's going to happen? You're going to have to row back. It will take double the work to row back to where you initially got, if you have rows, or you'll have to get out of your boat and you'll have to walk along the river, pull your boat, kind of envision that stuff. Or the other thing that could happen, right? And this actually did happen at one point in time for me, where the sail comes out, a wind comes up and gusts and takes the entire boat, flips it over, and you may or may not get trapped underneath the sail, die and drowned, right? That didn't happen to me.
Oh my God.
But Here's why I like the sailing analogy for this, because we really do believe you have to know what you want. Because though I was talking about a boat, and though I was talking about a realistic situation that many people have actually experienced in competitive racing, in sailing, in being on the water, in boats, right? Like, life is very much just the same, right? We get into this life, we don't know what we want. We're afraid to even try because we might fail, or insert excuse or insert scary based fear. And we get into this boat and we get pushed around by the tide. What that tide is what everyone else wants. What the wind is are the gut punches that inevitably come with life, right? And they're going to come. They're going to come no matter what you're doing. However, when you get into a boat, just like with life, when you get into life, or when you get into a new job, or when you get into a new career, or when you get in a coaching call with Bianca and I, and you're starting to get even just a glimmer of what you want, to the example that you brought in here, go her, right? Because it's scary to start to get clear on what you want. And I know that firsthand, right? When I stepped into the boat and I was like, I want first place, it's like, shoot, I don't know what that's going to require of me, but I know it's not going to be easy, right? That courage will take you far away from the tides that will drift you around, right? It will take you far away from those people that will just push you to every single wish, desire, and whim that they have. And it will take you away from having the wind just harness your sails and flip your boat over, right? In this analogy, this is like you getting not only pushed around by everyone else's whims, wants, desires, but you being able to harness that which comes at you, which I think that this client did an incredible job at, which every single one of our listeners, by knowing what you want, or at least having the courage to profess a sliver of what that might look like, right? That will help you start to tap into this well of wisdom, of understanding, of knowing thyself, of self-awareness, of understanding the world, right? Because it will require a little bit more of you than the person that steps in the boat and expects things to happen. So hopefully you never get into a boat again, not knowing what you want. You certainly don't get into a boat not knowing how to harness the wind, because the sails will take you into a direction that you may or may not make it out of, right? But to this life analogy, I can't tell you how much there's been so much benefit for the people who have mustered the courage to really just express what they want. And there's so much left on the table for everyone who's not doing that. So as a listener, we hope that today it spruced you up a little bit. And these 5 steps that B went through, see what you could apply those to. Because what's on the table for you, you never know. And that's the thing. Don't ever leave that stuff up to chance. The tides will push you down. The gut punches will come. And like I said, the wind will take you to a destiny that you may not want. So, oh man.
There's a formula for getting what you want. It's tangible. If anyone else has ever achieved it, it means there's a way to get it. But you have to be clear on what it is that you want and why you want it, so that you can tap into that, so that you can, ask for help and get the resources to actually help you do that. Just like this client. She didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, but she knew she needed closure. She knew she needed something, and she had the courage to ask. So for everyone out there, getting what you want, it is possible. Well, under some circumstances, right? I'm never going to grow 7 inches overnight, but there's some things that are realistic that I can get. So I'm like,
suggestion. Let me think about a way how my optimism bias is like, well, if you did have 7-inch heels in the morning when you woke up, technically, no. Yeah. Okay. My episode suggestion.
Goodness.
We're rating it in. My episode suggestion for this episode is 82. Aligned goals and what they can do for you.
Mine is 147, the key to getting what you want. So this one was about you have to know what you want. The other one is how do you actually do it? So I take those steps in much greater detail in that episode. So head on over to that. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Happy Monday.